I'm Maya. I've never told this story out loud before. Not because it's shocking, but because admitting it means admitting that I helped build the cage I almost suffocated in. If you met me a few years ago, you'd think I had it all figured out. Top grades, quiet, reliable, the good daughter. But that version of me was exhausted and scared and constantly trying not to disappoint people who never asked if I was okay. Let me start from the beginning. Growing up, my house ran on rules. Not written ones, unspoken ones. Don't talk back. Don't cry in front of guests. Don't be average. My mom used to say, discipline is love. And I believed her. I really did. My dad worked long hours and stayed out of emotional territory completely. So it was mostly just me and my mom, her expectations filling every room. If I scored 92, she'd ask where the other 8 went. If I stayed out late studying, she'd say that's what successful people do. And when I said I was tired, she'd remind me that tiredness was temporary, but failure lasted forever. I learned early that love came with conditions. So I worked for it. By the time I hit college, I was living on autopilot. Same routine every day. Classes, internship, library, home. I didn't party, didn't date, didn't complain. I thought that made me strong. But here's the thing, no one tells you about being the responsible one. People start using your reliability. It began small. My cousin needed help filling out applications. A family friend needed me to tutor their kid just for a week. My mom volunteered me for everything because, in her words, you can handle it. And I could, until I couldn't. The breaking point came in my final year. I'd landed a prestigious internship, one I'd worked years for. It was supposed to be my way out, my first real step toward independence. But 2 weeks in, my mom sat me down. She didn't ask. She informed. My grandmother was sick. Someone needed to stay home more, manage things, be there. You're the only one I trust, she said. And just like that, my schedule collapsed. I started missing meetings, turning in work late, falling asleep on buses. When my supervisor called me in, I panicked. She looked at me, not angry, not disappointed, just confused. You're talented, she said, but you're stretched thin, and this field doesn't wait. I nodded, apologized, promised to do better. I didn't tell her the truth, that my life wasn't my own. Then came the call. I'd been awake for almost 36 hours, hospital visits, assignments, deadlines. My phone rang while I was crossing the street. It was my internship office. They were letting me go. No drama, no yelling, just final. I remember standing there, traffic blurring past, feeling absolutely nothing. Not sadness, not anger, just empty. When I told my mom, she went quiet. Then she said something that cracked something inside me. Well, family comes first. That was it. No acknowledgement of what I lost. No apology. Just a reminder that I'd done what was expected. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom and cried so hard I scared myself. I wasn't crying about the internship. I was crying because I realized something terrifying. I didn't know who I was without being useful. The next few weeks were messy. I snapped at people, stopped answering calls, let dishes pile up for the first time in my life. My mom didn't understand. She accused me of being ungrateful, of changing, and she was right. I was changing. Because for the first time, I asked myself a question I'd never allowed before. What do I want? Not what makes my family proud. Not what looks good on paper. What I want. I moved out 3 months later. Not dramatically. No shouting. I just packed a bag, found a shared apartment, and left. My mom didn't stop me, but she didn't help either. For a while, we barely spoke. And I won't lie, those months were hard. I worked part-time jobs, got rejected a lot, doubted myself constantly. But something incredible happened. But not in the way people expect. Nothing magically fixed itself. No big opportunity fell into my lap. No movie-style redemption moment. What happened was quieter and honestly, scarier. I stopped being needed. At first, it felt like withdrawal. No one was calling me at 6 a.m. No one was reminding me what had to be done. No emergencies waiting for me to solve them. I'd wake up and just lie there, staring at the ceiling, panicking. Because when your whole identity is built around being useful, silence feels like failure. I remember sitting alone in my tiny rented room one evening, holding my phone, almost hoping someone would ask me for help just so I'd know I still mattered. No one did, and that's when it hit me. I had spent my entire life earning my worth, not discovering it, so I started doing something completely unnatural for me. I disappointed people. I said, I can't. I'm busy. No. The first time I said no to my mom, my hand shook. She went quiet, then sighed. You've changed, she said. And instead of apologizing like I always did, I said something I'd never said before. I had to. There was a long pause. Then she said, I didn't raise you like this. And for the first time in my life, I thought, maybe that's the point. The real turning point came a few months later. I ran into my old supervisor by accident at a cafe. I almost didn't say hi. I felt ashamed, like I'd failed her. But she recognized me first. She smiled and asked how I was doing. And instead of giving my usual polished answer, I told her the truth. I burned out. I lost myself. I'm trying to rebuild. She nodded slowly. Then she said something that rewired my brain. You know, the people who struggle the most here aren't the lazy ones. It's the ones who are trained to never stop. She didn't offer me a job. She offered me perspective. And somehow that meant more. I started rebuilding my life deliberately this time. Not stacking achievements, but building space. I chose work that paid less but didn't eat me alive. I stopped answering emails after a certain hour. I let myself rest without explaining why. And slowly, painfully, I started figuring out who I was when no one needed anything from me. Turns out, I'm not boring. I like walking without headphones. I like writing things that no one grades. I like people who ask me how I feel and actually wait for the answer. Most of all, I like the version of me that doesn't flinch when someone is disappointed. My relationship with my mom changed too. Not overnight. We argued. A lot. But eventually, one evening, she admitted something she'd never said out loud. I was scared you'd end up like me, she said. Tired, invisible, only valued for what I give. And suddenly, everything made sense. She hadn't been cruel. She'd been afraid. That didn't excuse the pressure, but it softened the anger. Now, when she tries to cross my boundaries, I hold them gently but firmly. And when I leave her house, I no longer feel like I'm running away. I feel like I'm returning to myself. So yeah, something incredible did happen. I stopped living like love had to be earned. I stopped confusing responsibility with self-worth. I stopped being the perfect daughter. And in doing that, I finally became a whole person. If you're listening to this and you feel exhausted for reasons you can't explain, if you're the one everyone relies on, if your biggest fear isn't failure, but rest, please hear this. You are allowed to be more than useful. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to choose yourself, even if it disappoints people. Especially then,